There we go. Hey, everybody. All 11 of you, welcome. Welcome to our modified classroom setting today. Let's bring that down a little bit so we're not peeking too bad. Thank you for joining in these weird, uncertain times that we're in. Oh, there we go. We're going to hang for just a few minutes, see if anyone else joins us a little bit later. I apologize that the chat is not working. It's meant to, but internet connections start to get a little wonky as we're approaching the middle of the day, which is peak volume for everyone. And this is the third live stream of the day, so I'm pretty sure my ISP is looking at me going, what the hell are you doing? That's okay. If you're here with us now, thank you for joining. Thank you. Cool. All right. Today's music of the day, as you know, I like to try and play music in class, brought to us by Amy Winehouse, spinning on vinyl behind us. I would turn it up so you can hear, but then YouTube will flag it, so I can't do that. Cool. All right, cool. Love it. Awesome. Yeah, really bummed that this chat's not working. So sorry. All right, let's 16 of us. Yeah, we'll wait another minute, see if the other few pop on. My water's over there, though. Pardon. So, well, I can ask questions, but I guess I really can't get answers right now, which is kind of a bummer. Hopefully that will be resolved in the near future. Although, I don't know how many streams I'm going to do. If they're not warranted, obviously, I won't be doing them. So my objective in doing this, as well as anything online, is to make sure that we're utilizing your time meaningfully and not wasting it. But I don't know what other classes are doing, so I know it's guys. I'm so this is kind of a crapshoot, especially with a class like this. I hope you can hear me okay. I hope you can see me okay. I hope it's not super laggy. All right. I guess we'll just get moving. Do some light stuff first. It should be a rather light day. I want to thank the few of you that I spoke with the last class about kind of spitballing this idea around that we're going to get into on Wednesday and Friday. And it's probably going to spill into next week. I have some things outlined for us. You can take a look here. It's going to be an interesting endeavor doing this. As I'm sure you know in all your classes, teachers are kind of scrambling to try and put things together that make sense. And in a class like this, it's really difficult to do that. So there's a few things on the docket for this week. Next week is I'm gonna figure this out as we go and try and be as transparent as possible with everything that we got going on. So just bear with me in that regard. I'm going to do my best to try and make some of these projects at least a little bit interesting and different than maybe what you've been doing in some other classes. And so I will ask you to shoot some video at home using your phones. And I'm going to do some research and see if there's any simple editors out there, either for your Chromebook or even on your phone, that are accessible. And if not, then we'll just shoot some video and upload that from your phone to Drive. So I would definitely, if you don't already, have that Google Drive app ready to go. So, I have excellent connection. That's great, but still no chat. Okay. All right. So where this puts us with what we have to cover today and where it puts us with the project that we left off right in the middle of. I do want to make one note on that. We are going to rejoin our documentary project when we get back to school, whenever that may be. But in the meantime, if you find yourself with days where they're a little bit lighter, and realistically they may be, as 4 hours of scheduled class time is much shorter than your traditional day, and don't sleep on that. If you have the means to shoot some B-roll, find some B-roll. You want to interview a parent? Cool. Or a brother? Awesome. Like, do those things now. Stockpile resources to use for later when we get back. So when we rejoin, we may push the due date back a little bit to just kind of get our footing. But know that like having some resources ready to go, right? Interview your mom or dad, throw it up on Google Drive, boom, it's ready to download when we get back to class. Awesome. Write your voiceover script, record it on your phone, boom, that part's done. So you can still stay on top of that a little bit. All right, the better you are when we get back, the better off you'll be in making sure we're playing catch up on that. But we are going to transition a little bit to what was next on the docket after our documentary project was 10-Day. And 10-Day is still happening, just with a little bit more flexibility. So I've been in communication with the 10-Day organizers, and they're still going to release the information on Monday, next Monday, the stipulations for the project. But I'm going to hold on to those. All right. What they've also allowed us to do is set custom dates for the 10-Day film challenge, meaning we might have some time to wrap this project up and then wait for Mrs. Herrick and Miss Robinson, their classes to fall in line where we're kind of all at the same point, and we can go into that together. So I've already spoken to them, and we've agreed to kind of find a date that works for all of us once we get back. So 10 days still on the horizon, and our end of the year project, which would come after that, is probably going to be simplified, modified, or in flux, depending on when we are back. That is the big question. I think 2 weeks might be optimistic. We'll see. I guess it depends on how much of the media you want to believe. So, yeah, that's kind of where we'll be class-wise when we return. Hopefully, we'll be back to normal and sooner rather than later. But until then, we're going to switch gears a little bit. And so I had wanted to spend some time going over some things that'll pertain to 10-Day a little bit, that'll pertain to writing a little bit as far as screenwriting. I don't mean write a whole bunch of stuff. And will help with the pseudo mini video project I'll have you do over the next, right now, 2 to 3 classes. We're going to see how this comes together, see how you guys do with it. I think it might be fun and interesting. And so I wanted to, and I'm going to try and keep this brief, so I'm going to move through stuff quickly. Obviously, anything that I show to you guys from a resource standpoint, I will put on Classroom, but I want to make an aim outside of our first chat today with the inability to ask any questions. I want to try and make things presentation-wise shorter for you. I don't want you to feel like you have to sit here for an hour, all right? And the beautiful thing is, if you are interrupted, if you do have to step away for a second, I can't tell, but like, do those things and know that this video, once the stream is ended, will be available on YouTube via the link that's in our Google Classroom stream. And so I wanted to spend today talking a little bit about what makes a good character, because this is something that you're going to have to do anytime you create a story, is come up with interesting and unique characters. And the focus today will obviously be on main characters, but this is going to set the template for the short video project we've got coming up. And I thought it would be a good way to kind of ease into this digital learning environment. So I apologize if there are tech issues along the way. I'm going to keep going. But again, like I said, I'm going to try and do this quickly. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about what makes a good main character. All right. Characters are the lifeblood of your story. The things that happen around them are usually the dressing for getting your character to do things to move the story forward. And so everything that happens in that film, that short story, that TV show is an extension of what they do and how they react. But it does need to be a healthy balance of those two things. All right. So if you treat the idea of a screenplay like a part of speech, it would most definitely be a noun, all right? Because the screenplay is a story about a person in a place doing their thing. And so the character themselves needs action, and they need action around them, and they need to take action, all right? But in order for that to take place, you need to know who your story is about. And if you don't know your characters well enough, it gets really hard to write the rest of that story. Now, I used to have a professor in college that would always tell me, if you don't know what kind of candy your character's buying while they're waiting in the grocery store line checking out, you don't know your character well enough. And well, that's a bit extreme. I think when you get to write professionally, that might be a mindset to have. Needless to say, you want to know your characters, all right? Because if you know them, you know what happens to them and what they have to go through, but you know how they would react to certain situations. You know what they would say as a rebuttal to certain situations or in conversations. And if you know where they're going to end up at the end of the story, you know how to get your character there, and the decisions they make are logical to that character. All right? So knowing all that becomes very, very helpful. All right, because if you don't know, your character's kind of aimlessly doing things, and audiences will know. And maybe you've seen TV shows where after a few seasons, characters become very different than who they are or who they were when the show first started. That might be we've written into a corner, or that might be we're out of ideas, so we're going to shift a little bit. But normally with American TV shows, there's no end in sight. They want to keep things running for as long as possible because that money's there. So there's no end game, and having that will help. Now, those that take screenwriting, some of this will be a little bit familiar to you, and that's okay. We're going to move quickly through it. So the second act, after you've established your character, gives the obstacles that your character needs to go through, and allow us then to bond with that character. Again, if you know your character, you know what obstacles they can have that will be more impactful to them and thus the audience, right? So, for example, in the film Indiana Jones, he's afraid of snakes, and that's established early on in the movie. So when he falls through the roof of a hidden temple and lands in a pile of snakes, that makes sense for that character to be fearful and scared because it was set up earlier. And naturally, we go, oh, of course it's snakes. Why wouldn't it be? So one of my favorite statements about film as a whole is that film is behavior. What your characters do is more important than what they say. And so a lot of early TV production films, especially my TV1 classes, as we've done a few short films now, reference or use dialogue as a means to express how a person feels. And I think I remember a comment I even made with a project we did long ago. I believe it was to Dean and Dean's group about how his character, walking down the hall said, "Oh man, I'm so tired. I think I'll take a nap." And then he proceeds to nap. But a yawn or, rubbing his eyes is another way to get that point across without needing to explicitly state. So make sure your characters are doing things, and not always things happening to them, right? They can react to stuff, but film shouldn't be all reactionary. Your characters need to do some level of action. And if you look at your character, we can break it down into two basic categories. One, their interior life, which is everything that's happened to your character from birth until your film starts, all right? Because all of that shapes the person that we're seeing when we fade from black to that character. All right. We also have their exterior life, which is from the start of the movie to the end of the movie. And that's the growth period where your character is going to change and your audience can see them change, because in films, we like to see the growth of a character, right? Television and movies are different. Characters at the end of a TV show typically return to who they were at the beginning of that TV show. Films are very different in that after 90 minutes, our character is usually better, or they've grown in some capacity. That's what audiences like to see. So if you break down by decade a little bit, the interior becomes the biography of your character. All right. If you look at those first 10 years, birth, preschool, elementary school, friends, family, this is when they're discovering themselves as humans. All right. So there is a psychology element to writing that could really help you. All right. Which is why in film school, I was always encouraged to take sociology, psychology, or anthropology classes to study human behavior. It helps you write characters that you might not know otherwise. All right. Your second 10 years, your middle school, high school, careers, anything you do in sports, your political agenda, clubs, activities, friends, relationships, yes, sexual experience, employment. Are there any major traumatic events? All these things shape who we are. And if you start by asking yourself what, all right, that's a really great way to dig into your characters. What was their family like when they were 5 years old? What did your 13-year-old character do when he got home from school? What allows you to build out an appropriate response where asking yourself a generic question like, what do they do in middle school? Okay, that's good. Give me a rundown of those classes. Start to be specific with some things. All right, because what implies a direct, definable answer? What kind of childhood did he have or she have? What was his or her relationship to their parents? What kind of child were they like? What kind of trouble did they get into? All right, what kind of trouble did they get into is a great prompt to a story. And I'm sure maybe you at home have had a moment where growing up you did something you shouldn't do, and you remember that very vividly because it was the first time maybe you got scolded for doing something reckless, right? There's a story there. What was that home like? What kind of hobbies do they have? What clubs were they a part of? What was high school like for them? What college did they go to? What college did they want to go to but didn't get into, and why? Right? These are all things that we can ask. So ask what when you're developing your character. All right. And then trace that character out until your story starts. All right. And I know that could be a longer journey for some people, as if you're writing about a 50-year-old middle-aged man, you need to trace out a longer life than, okay, I'm writing about a 18-year-old college student. And part of the challenge is that we tend to write about what we know. And so my challenge to you guys when we get into our assignment is to create a character that's not based on you. And that's hard to do. All right. You can keep it in the same age range if you don't want to traject that much. But try and find characteristics and traits that you don't have. And that might make it more fun to write. The interior aspect of things is knowing that who your character is inside and out, so that you can create obstacles or answer questions that they will come across in their story. All right. So if we look at the exterior side, I break it down into 3 categories. All right. Professional. What is work like for them? What do they do? What's their career? What do they love or hate about work? And how do they get along with their coworkers? Professional life gives you an area of a film that you can visit if your character needs to do something. Most characters work, all right, or have a job, or it's referenced in some capacity. So being able to reference that experience and perspective is helpful. All right, what's their personal life like? Are they married? Are they single? Are they widowed? Are they losing someone currently? How long have they been married? When did they meet? Do they fight a lot? Right? These are all very specific questions that you can develop about your character. And then their private life. All right, so professional, personal, and private. And this is a great one to get into the nuance of a character, because there are a lot of times in a film where a character finds themselves alone, and developing parts of a story that revolve around actions a character would do while they're alone can be challenging. But again, if we map that out, then we know, right? What do they watch on TV when they come home from their job that they may or may not like? Do they go to the gym? How many times a week do they go to the gym? What are they working out for? These are the things that you can answer, all right, and create and come up with, so that if you're ever at a lull in your story and what your character could be doing, you have options, right? If someone asks you, what do you do when you get home from school? The answer can't be nothing. I mean, you have to do something, right? So does it revolve around any of this private stuff? And if so, when your character gets home from school, what are they going to do? All right. So the reason why we spend time on this is because we want our characters to work and move and function and exist in a real, believable world. And that's not to say that it needs to be grounded. It could be a science fiction story on a distant planet. It's going to be real to the characters that are in that environment. All right. But if you get stuck on what your character should be doing next, look to the real life of that character and then put them in a spot that's natural for them to be in. And so what this could end up doing is making the writing process a little bit longer. All right. I've written screenplays where I've then gone back and just took out chunks of pages because when my character got home from work and they opted to go to the gym, I have a gym scene that I decided later, well, that was kind of pointless. But that gym scene took me to where he went after the gym. All right. And that led to an interaction with a character that he met. And so you can use these to move your character through like their day to day and then cut the scenes that maybe aren't interesting or maybe don't have an immediate impact on the plot of that story. Okay, so your character becomes what he or she does. They need to be active. They need to do things and cause things to happen, but not always have things happen to them. All right, a character that reacts all the time is substantially less interesting than a character that is doing things. And sometimes doing things may be great, and sometimes doing things may be disastrous, but the active portion of that makes them interesting to watch. All right, and so if you can figure out what it is your character is looking to achieve by the end of the story, it puts them on their path to try and do that. And so if they want something, all right, usually in a tangible way, we can say that that's an external want. But if they need something, then that would be an internal desire, and that something would typically force a change. The thing here is that your characters are not perfect. I don't think there's a character in the history of film that's perfect. They're all flawed, all right? And, you know, the biggest example would be like Superman as a film character is incredibly hard to base a story around because, well, he can't be hurt or destroyed or killed, which makes any action scene or fight scene kind of pointless because we know he'll be fine at the end. So what their flaw needs to be based on something else, and their flaw is based on, or his flaw, Superman's flaw, is based on his inability to not be a hero to the city metropolis, and so his flaw is his need is based on not knowing his parents or having that kind of relationship with them, and so his want is to save the day, all right, and in doing so, his need is showing that he can be a protector of someone, despite his flaws, and so you always want to have a flawed character, all right. So a strong dramatic need, all right, this is what your main character wants to win or get or achieve over the course of your story, all right. They should have an individual point of view, right. The way they see the world should be unique and interesting, all right. They should personify an attitude, right, which is like a manner or opinion, but that opinion is based on an intellectual decision. That's just not, you know, my character is going to be a jerk because I think it'd be fun to write a jerk. There's usually a reason. They could be a jerk, but just make sure that's grounded in something very real, all right? And then ideally your character will go through some sort of change at the end. Now we're going to pause here. I'm going to get out of this and bounce back to my solo cam here, all right? Oh, no data. So it broke? No shit. Cool. Cool. All right. Thank you for all the updates on the people that are commenting here. Yeah, I see that. Okay. So we're going to scrap this and this. We're just going to call it. I'm going to put the assignment up in Classroom. I hope you caught some of what I said. That's kind of a bummer, but we expect this to kind of happen a little bit. So we're going to end this now, and we'll try again later. Thanks, guys.